Om Hiranmaye Parikoshe Virajan Brahmanishkalam Tachu Brahm Jyotisham Jyoti Tadyadatma Vidho Vidhu. Shining like burnished gold, highest and deepest, the core intelligence of living beings, partless and indivisible, pure, free of all taint. The essence of all, which all beings seek, either knowingly or unknowingly, there shines Brahman. It is that which the Guru teaches. It is that which the wise ones exult in. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Dhanurgrihitva Upanishadam Mahastram Sharam Hupasanishita Sanjayita Ayamya Tad Bhavakatena Chetasa Laksham Tadivaksharam Somya Vidhi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Taking as bow that mighty weapon furnished by the Upanishads and other non-dual scriptures, fasten to it the mind as an arrow made sharpened by thoughts on reality alone. Then, pulling full strength, O student, release and penetrate the mark, that imperishable Brahman. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Saha Viryam Karvavahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu, Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the teachings, or with the world. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. And it is this which we were talking about all day yesterday in the first class on the Taittiriya Upanishad, which we took up for study after finishing the Svetasvatara Upanishad. Both of these Upanishads fall in the Yajurveda, in the Krishna Yajurveda section. You can see them underlined here, and all these other Upanishads, which are 108, which is exactly the same as the number of beads you have on your mala, and other profound significances for the number 108. The Upanishads too, although there might have been hundreds, maybe thousands of them, and we don't think like the fundamentalists that it's a closed book. Upanishads are as many as people. That is, as soon as the soul gets enlightened and thinks less and less of the body-brain and more of the prana mind, then all of a sudden it's a walking Upanishad in potential. All the wisdom of that particular person, family, lineage, heritage, progeny, as we were talking about yesterday, begins to exude as the light of consciousness in any age. Krishna says there, actually on that portrait, from age to age I am born, to destroy the old Dharma and to resurrect the new Dharma. So we find this great being coming again and again as an exemplar. In India, we do not think of Savior, we think of exemplar. Christ to us is an exemplar, that is, be in as thy Father is in heaven, perfect. See? So if a Savior can begin to fall, as it were, can begin to become instead of a doorway, it can become a doormat, you see, as they say. So an exemplar is different. You begin to follow that great example, and then you too join the ranks of the illumined souls, and you live a life free of karma, samskaras, sufferings, as the Buddha said, the 6 transformations and the various sufferings. That's the point of existence. It's not to live a slovenly existence or in a misery-prone existence or a karma-laden existence of sense gratification and death. What's the point in that? I'd rather stay clear of the body if that's the point, and transcend rebirth, as snap the world's chains, as they say of Ramakrishna. So, a walking Upanishad is a result of taking these teachings to heart and taking the great souls as an exemplar. To us, the Guru is not a personality in Vedanta; it's a principle, and it exists in everyone, actually in everything. Everything is a teacher to you. It depends on the state of your mind, and it's equal in quality and quantity in everything and every being, but it's different in manifestation. That's a good point to understand about divinity. If you're looking for reality, we call it Brahman, Allah, Almighty Father, whatever you might call it, then you'll find it equally in everything and in every one. But the degree of realization is different, and also the degree of manifestation is limited by the vehicle. You see, light shines very poorly off a rock, shines better off a leaf, shines better off a lake, but best of all off of a mirror. Yeah. So you want that mind to become clear and clean, free of distortions. Even a lake, with ripples, can show you many suns when there's really only one sun in the sky. So the mind too has to become that, free of distortions, like the mirror. And they asked Shankara about that, actually. They said, why do you, a realized soul, still practice devotions? Ramakrishna, we were just listening to him read, as we read out of the Gospel before the live stream audience joined us. He said, I prefer to see divine reality as it is, free of distortions, free of overlays, free of superimpositions, free of conditionings, free of sublations, free of modifications. There's about 5 words that Vedanta has borrowed from Sanskrit and English. Anything that's an overlay or a false superimposition, I prefer to see it that way. So I keep the mirror of my mind wiped clean every day with meditation, with study of scripture, with bhakti, devotional exercises, and with serving God and mankind. You don't serve mankind, you serve God and mankind. You serve mankind as God, then it's where you see the ego begin to effloresce. The spiritual ego being the hardest thing to get rid of. But if you serve God and mankind, then that gives the person the hint that divinity is in him or her, beyond gender, we say in Vedanta, and then they can raise themselves to it. So you never pull Brahman down to your comfort zones, you raise yourself up to that Brahman. And unfortunately, the latter tendency is what most people try and do. God, though in Vedanta, Brahman cannot become a form, it cannot be named, it cannot be thought of. It isn't subject to time, space, and causation or karma. It's, as I just chanted, there shines Brahman, pure and untainted, indivisible, homogeneous, pure conscious awareness. How can you sublate or condition or separate something like that? Therefore, Ramakrishna said, it's the only thing that's never been tainted by the tongue of man. So in that case, Shankara says, I want to keep the mirror of my mind wiped completely clean. And it says you 2 things, basically. That one, there is an indeterminable, indivisible mass of pure conscious awareness out of which all things have come. The second thing it tells you is the mind is not it. If you have to keep the mind wiped clean to see that, then you must infer that mind must not be Brahman. Well, this teaching is for people who already know that the body is not Brahman, because it can't be a form. Yet there it is as the foundation of all forms. So teachings on the non-dual Brahman, we don't get them in the West. We don't have a non-dual philosophy. Very scarce in Europe for 2,000 years. What to speak of America for 200 years. So we have to go and borrow it from the wisdom traditions. We have faith traditions, Christianity, Judaism, and so forth. But where's the wisdom tradition? So that's called the Dharma. And we go looking for that to places like India and China, and as Zen in Japan. 32 generations of India matured over time, ended up as Zen Buddhism in Japan. So it took some distilling process there to find the Near East, you see, from the Far East to the Near East. But when it jumped from the Far East and Near East and Middle East, that's Christianity, Christ, to America, and then all of a sudden you've got a hybrid. It's a hybrid we hope will work. Some hybrids work, some don't. It still remains to be seen with the Western people. This here you see, 20 years we've been together as SRV Association, is really an experiment to see how people will take to Vedanta, which we described yesterday as an underground river. Each one of you, each one of us, are responsible for tending Swami Vivekananda's boon and gift to us of bringing the Vedanta here in 1893 at the Parliament of Religions. It got its public start, you might say, there, and it caused a great sensation. But since that sensation, it's gone underground again like a river, and it comes up every once in a while showing its truth. And it's all based upon wisdom that the ancient rishis gave us in the Upanishads. You don't call her Mother India for no reason, the mother of all religions, because Buddhism is out of India, and these are profound traditions that come out. Yoga, Samkhya, Tantra. I mean, you go on naming the home of Jainism, Sufism, that is Sikhism rather. You have all these various movements inside of this ocean of consciousness, and not just one avatar and one holy book, but dozens and hundreds of each. So we look to that great Mother India. That, you know, there's the quote right there, actually, that Swamiji used in one of his letters to one of his brother monks, perhaps, when he said, and I quote, "Sober-minded men have become disgusted with their superstitious religions and are looking to India for new light. How eagerly they take in any little bit of the grand thoughts of the holy Vedas, which resist and are unharmed by the terrible onslaughts of modern science. The theories of a creation out of nothing, a created soul, and a big tyrant of a god sitting on a throne in a place called heaven, and of eternal hellfires have disgusted the educated, and the noble thoughts of the Vedas about the eternity of creation and of the soul, they're imbibing fast in one shape or another." Well, you hear somebody in 1893 say something like that to you when you've just left England, you know, because of tyrants, and the religion and politics are in bed all the time together, and money is your god, and materialism is the only reason to live. And if you're an educated person and you're seeking something higher, then you're going to look and say, "What do you mean by that, sir?" And Vivekananda will respond to you and say, "Fundamentalist religion is what you've been depending on for hundreds and thousands of years. Only a few bright luminaries in Christendom, like Meister Eckhart, and a few bright devotional flames like St. Francis and so forth, have come up, you see, out of that dualistic thinking and understood that I and my Father are one, if you want to put it that way. Or we say it in Sanskrit, Aham Brahmasmi, I am that Brahman. Take away this body-mind mechanism, these overlays, these coverings, these conditions, these modifications, these sublations, these vivartas, these adhyasas, then there's nothing but Brahman there, and there can be no division between God and mankind. Mankind is God walking around on two legs, is one of his quotes. So you have a great soul like that with great authority standing in front of you. what to speak of wearing an orange robe and a huge turban, you see, looking at you, then you're going to open your eyes and your eyebrows are going to raise, and you're going to say, what do you mean by that, sir? And we believe in the eternity of creation. That is, there's no such thing as beginnings, middles, and ends. Everything is non-originated. You can't get something out of nothing. See, any object there, you've taken it from its formless state, its naturally formless state, and you've made it into a form. We call that Maya. Right? There's a 4-letter word for that. And all the problems that happen because of it. You see, anything coming into form is subject to birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death. The thinking, educated people don't take that lightly. See, well, I see there's a sacrifice to be made by coming into the body, and there's a purpose for coming into the body, and I must realize it in this lifetime, or die trying, and die trying many times until you finally reach the goal of human existence. So you cannot produce an unproduced thing. Everything comes from formlessness. You must know that because you went into deep sleep last night and everything was formless. No ego, no world, no thoughts, no money, and, oh yes, no cell phones. And all of a sudden you come back and here you are. You've brought it all back into manifestation. And this is happening not just with one soul, but collective consciousness. When we say collective consciousness, we don't just mean, and somebody can give me the current number today, 8 to 11 billion people on Earth. We don't just mean that collective consciousness. We mean the collective consciousness of the ancestors who are still with us, the collective consciousness of the celestials, called angels, affectionately, the collective consciousness of the gods and goddesses, who are many. Any of you who have meditated might know that, or done any upasana or vipassana, you know that there are deities. And the collective consciousness of the great souls who wrote these scriptures, that is, who noted them down finally after not writing them for ages, finally put them into writing for us. And the collective consciousness of beings like the Trinity, which we talked about yesterday, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Yesterday was Guru Purnima, which was the holy day for the world teacher, which is, as we said, a principle, not a personality. And they would tell you, like Vivekananda, the eternity of a creation and the eternity of a soul is what you want to think more in terms of. How can you create a soul? Tell me. You get it out of dust? Is it breathed out of the mouth of some great tyrant sitting on a throne in the sky? Are you so superstitious as to believe such things? If you take them symbolically, sure, you can. But to take them literally, if you want it, what you want to take literally is the fact that their soul is unborn. That's why we sing all the time those beautiful slokas on that. Namrichor na shanka, name jati beda, pita naiva me naiva, mata majanmaha. Chirananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham Om means basically Namritjor, no shanka, name jati beda. Jati means birth. And Mrityur means death. So I have no birth, I have no death simply because I was never born. You have to start out in this premise. The soul is never born. It's called the Jativada. Jati, birth, Jati, caste, Jati, culture. I have no birth because I have no death. And Pita naiva me naiva. Pita means father. Mata majanmaha. I have no mother. See, so no caste, no birth, no death. I am the birthless, deathless soul. We call it in Vedanta the Atman. You see, Atman is birthless and deathless. So that is one of the main pillars of India, non-dual pillars called Advaita, and the other is a parinama. Parinama means no change, no transformation takes place in reality. But look at all the transformations all around you. Children, so-called, growing, the ancestors departing and returning by the dozens, even since I started talking today. Trees growing, waves forming and falling, transformations of all kind are going on. So all of those are in Maya, or in nature, not in you. That's what is meant by a teaching like that. You're the witness of all those. We looked at that yesterday with that chart on the proofs of truth. You are the witness, Sakshi Chaitanya, of all that phenomena. Brahmanandam paramasukadam kevalam jnanamurtim dandvaititam gagana sadrisham tattvamashari laksham ekam nityam vimalamachalam sarvadi sakshi bhutam bhavatitam trigunarahitam sadgurum tannamami. That sakshi bhutam is the witness of all other changing phenomena. And when you adopt that position, like you put your body in an asana, but you have to put your mind in an asana. That's more important. You have to adapt a philosophy with a mental stance that is impervious to change, that is impervious to disease, death, and so forth. And that has to be based on the authority of a great soul and a great scripture like the Taittiriya Upanishad. I think the most difficult of all scriptures I've ever had to teach, because it's imbued with a lot of ancient wisdom out of one of these timeless cultures. There's movements in India. So we find that its opening slokas, as of yesterday, talked first about Sham no Mitra, Sham no Varunaha, Sham no Bhavat Varyana, Sham no Indra Brihaspati. That is, I pay my salutations to all beings, to mankind, to the ancestors, to the celestials, to the gods and goddesses, and to the Trinity. Sham no Vishnu Rudrakramaha. Vishnu is one of the Trinity, you see. And beautiful that the Upanishad makes the distinction between God with form and God beyond form. That's what we're missing here in the West. No idea of the formless reality. Like I said, your deep sleep state last night proves that when all form goes away, you still exist. You go into a state of samadhi, nirvana, asampragyata, nirvikalpa, satori. There are words for it in different religious traditions of the world. Fana in Muslim religion, beatific vision, however you might want to call it, you go into a state of near formlessness in death and at deep sleep. Nidra samadhi, they sometimes call it. Remember last night we sang that in the puja that we sang. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Chetaneti Abhidyate Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Nidra Rupena Samstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Namo Namaha. O Divine Mother of the Universe, Devi, Ya Devi, as deep sleep, the deep sleep of samadhi, you exist in the hearts and minds of all beings. Salutations unto thee. And the stotram goes on, O Divine Mother of the Universe, as divine memory, you exist in the hearts and minds of all beings. Salutations unto thee. Namastasyaya, namastas. The salutations go on and on about this Divine Mother principle of higher intelligence that Lord Buddha named himself after, Buddhi, Buddha. that permeates everything as the very nature of birthless, deathless intelligence, who is the witness of all phenomena, and who is the constant inspiration of the wise, the exaltation of the wise. And the only thing worth teaching that the Guru has to say is about that Divine Mother principle underlying everything. Call her by one of the many names that she assumes. So divine reality is not a name or a form, but it can assume name and form, but it should not identify with those names and forms. And then it becomes bound into a misfiance, you see. Then all of a sudden you're beginning to think you're a form, or that the form lives forever. But it's in deep sleep and at death and in a very good meditation and in samadhi are the 4 times when you go formless and you prove to yourself, I am Atma Brahma. The self is nothing other than the nameless, formless Brahman. Always was, always will be. And Smriti Rupena Samstita, I have a divine memory of being formless. It's been impressed upon my inner consciousness. So naturally I would go back into deep sleep and give up all dream forms and all waking state forms. I go to it every night, naturally. But now the seers want you to go to it consciously. You see, that's sadhana, practice, that's meditation. The 6th limb of yoga, 7th limb of yoga is dhyan. Remember the Taittiriya Upanishad, and we chanted it this morning at meditation at 6 a.m. down in the shrine room. Te, dhyan yoga, nugata, devatma shaktim, spagunayar nagudim, yaha karanani nikilani tani, kalatma yuktanya, adhidistatyekaha. That means practicing the yoga of meditation. The ancient rishis of India beheld the divine Shakti in everything, existing everywhere. Although covered by the modes of nature, name, form, time, space, etc., was nevertheless always one and indivisible, and that had been incomprehensible to them earlier due to the limitation of their own intellects. When the intellectual sheath broadened and it got rid of its ignorance, avidya, and then it broadened further and it took on lower knowledge, science, math, arts, and so forth, and then it broadened farther out of aparavidya, lower knowledge, to higher knowledge, paravidya. Then it saw the divine Shakti at the root of everything. And then it wrote the Upanishads through many vehicles, through many illumined vehicles. And we must become those. We must become that Brahman. We are that Brahman, so why not manifest it in this life? And that's the message of Swami Vivekananda. In books and temples, vain thy search. Thou only is the hand that holds, thine only is the hand that holds the rope which drags thee on. So cease lament, let go thy hold. Sannyasan bold, say Om Tat Sat Om. So he doesn't want you to be dragged from birth to death and death to birth. See? So give up this thirst for life, for sensual life, for materialistic life, for hedonistic life, for intellectual life even, and broaden your scope to take on a truly spiritual life, which is what Christ wanted for the fishermen. Oh, I see you have everything. Huts, loaves, wives, fishes, nets. I can make you fishers of men, though. But first, you're going to have to get an inner life. You're going to have to see that the kingdoms of heaven are within you, that all of this is within you. And it all goes back into as if nothing when you go into deep sleep, but it comes springing back and forth when you wake up. And hundreds and thousands of minds in different levels of consciousness in the many chambers of the Father's mansion are doing that every cycle. A cycle could be a yuga, 480,000 years. A cycle could be 480,000 years times 2 times 4 times 8 and be a Mahayuga. Or a cycle could be 24 hours. Or a cycle could be everyone do it with me. You see, it could be one breath. That's all. Creation, preservation, destruction, happening. But what is not known is it's all happening as phenomena inside of the witness consciousness. It's all taking place inside of you. Who? Little old me? No, not the little old me of the body-mind mechanism, the great me, the great I. I am Brahman. That me, see, with a capital M, the same me that Krishna says in the Gita, the unreal never exists. The real never ceases to be. The wise ones come to know this in time. Beautiful, you see. The unreal never exists. In other words, ignorance doesn't exist. So how can it cause any real doubt? If you're doubting anything, you're in double jeopardy. See, your doubt is based upon an ignorance that itself wasn't real. It's like piling more gloom on gloom. See, let darkness go, the will of the wisp, which leads with blinking light to pile more gloom on gloom. This thirst for life forever quench. It drags from birth to death and death to birth to soul. Where do you hear things like that? But in a free soul like Christ or Vivekananda or souls like that. There's where you go to drink from the stream of perennial wisdom. You have to put yourself in that atmosphere. Guru Dharma Sangha, Buddha Dharma Sangha, the triple gem. You say, Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Chaitaneti Abhidiyate Namastasya. And then you go to Tibet, and they say, Om Tari Tutari Turi Mama Ayu Punya Gyana Puktin Kurashawa Tahara Kali Tara Kali Durga. I'm getting confused here. No, it's the same language being spoken in different countries by luminaries who are all geared to the one mother consciousness. See? And that mother consciousness is the message of Sri Ramakrishna. See, he's come here to bring you the divine message of mother, God as mother. And he will use words like Kali, Durga, and Tara to communicate to you the many divine qualities of the mother. Sung in that stotram, for instance. And when the rishis speak the Upanishads, that's just mother's voice. You see, I don't know if you could see it, but behind all of these Upanishads, oh, who's that hiding back there? You see, playing the veena with the book and the holy book in one hand and the japamala in the other. Who is that? You see, behind the wisdom. It's the mother of wisdom, the Vak Devi. Vak means word. See? So they may say word brother in one tradition we know of, but we also say word. That means Om is the word. A-U-M, creation, preservation, destruction, projection, sustenance, withdrawal, mother, father, guru, waking, dreaming, deep sleep, in-breath, held breath, out-breath, that's all Om. And when you get interested in more than the body-brain complex, and you start getting interested in the life force and the mind, then you'll have all that's necessary to visit the kingdoms within you consciously. Not just in deep sleep as you go through some flits of dreams here and there, but as a conscious soul who visits the realm of the ancestors and then who visits the realm of the celestials and visits the realm of the gods and goddesses, and maybe has darshan with one of the great souls who we thought left. You believe in the linear state of time, then you think Christ is gone 2,000 years ago and you're still waiting for him, you see. But how about that he's ever present, eternal, as your own consciousness? I am the light of the world, kind of Christ, you see. Or how about this, that even inside of relativity, he's probably already come 4 or 5 times and you've missed him. See? You think God can just be contained in one form and one religion. You don't think the Almighty Father is a little bit more expansive than that? That maybe he's getting a little bit tired of being called a big angry tyrant sitting on a throne and somewhere up above? See? And they come out and they go, and you look up there and what are they pointing at? See? There's nothing up there but the 5 elements, and probably 2 of them are in scarce quantity, called water and air. There's a lot of earth, fire, and ether up there, you see, but no God. God is not here in the universe. You have it wrong. the universe is in God. And that's how you see all this as God. By not trying to make God into a form, but by realizing that all form is in God. God is a somewhat loaded word in our country, but Brahman, Allah, Almighty Father, Chaitanya, absolute reality, pure conscious awareness, timeless, deathless consciousness. I can give you a bunch of other complementary words for reality. So yes, that divine mother consciousness is beautiful. And when I think of the Taittiriya Upanishad, I think of those songs we sing about her. Monopoli bhajakali icha hoi torjaya chari guru data mahamantra divaneshi japakori monopoli bhajakali. O playful mind, meditate on the mystery of Kali using any method of worship you wish, or simply breathe in, breathe out her holy name day by day, breath by breath. And think of her as the living seed of transforming power, planted by your Guru within you in the form of the mantra. Shut my mouth. The living seed of transforming power planted by my Guru in my heart. That's the mantra. This song is basically about mantra. Guru Data Maha Mantra. See? The Guru has given me the great mantra. What is the great mantra? Divine Mother. See? The Mother mantra will open up all doors for you. Other mantras can only open up certain doors, but if you get the mantra of the Divine Mother, whose creation all this is, who takes care of all the rooms in the mansion, in God's mansion, you see. She's everywhere there, cleaning, sweeping, preparing, worshipping. That mother, then you'll know the secret of Shiva and Shakti, the tantric secret of Shiva and Shakti, or you'll know the Vedantic secret of Brahman and Maya, or you'll know the yogic secret of Parama Purusha and Chit Shakti. See? You'll know the Sita, Rama, Radha, Krishna, Jesus, Mary, Muhammad, Fatima, Ramakrishna, Sharada secret of the divine couple coming from age to age over and over and over again. And you'll become an Ishvarakoti. That is, you'll become that one who not just waits for 2,000 years to see something that is veiled from you, but never leaves them, never leaves their side. Holy Mother, my teacher's teacher, Sri Sharda Devi, Ramakrishna's divine consort, said once, practice meditation constantly, but never believe that just because you close your eyes, God exists, and when you open your eyes, God ceases to exist. That's non-duality, you see. You see God everywhere, whether eyes are open or closed. That is, whether mind is awake or sleeping, whether form is present or gone, like in pralaya, what science ignorantly calls the void. You see, because you have to avoid the void. You have to annihilate nihilism, because I am. There's no doubting that. You can go on getting rid of everything, I'll renounce this, I'll renounce that. I replace this, I take that away. But you can never get rid of the presence of the one who's doing the renouncing. See, that's you. You always end up to be existent at the end. You've seen yourself born and die many times. You've just gone into periods of hiding behind the curtain of nescience via fear or doubt or brooding or whatever the case may be, because you didn't get rid of it in your previous lifetime. Now, be off with it. Ignorance is unreal, therefore it can't cause any real doubt. Try Dalai Lama's method, see. Well, let's see, how many lifetimes shall I be born and die without being born and dying? 14, I guess. See, I've been Dalai Lama 14 times. I took my bodhisattva vow in a certain life, now I'm free. From then on I was free, and then I could help others to get free. Because why would he come back? To help Tibet? Tibet's annexed. Tibet's a vacation land for worldly people. Maybe even for evil people. See? So was that the purpose he came back? Futility? Did Christ come back to be crucified? So you have to get into the eternal step of things, the non-dual step, the Advaitic element, the I and my Father are one element. And that is a mental stance that's unimpeachable. Once you take that, you can never back off from it. You are that. And nothing can make it otherwise. Now, just learn how to be more and more stable in it, more and more stable in it. Live in it with each breath. The Upanishads, the seers who wrote them, called the rishis, must have done that many times, you see. And we know by yesterday's teachings that the Upanishad focuses in on them, and that was what was in this chart. I'll give you a quick review of yesterday for those of you who weren't present. There you see all of these various beings in an artist's representation spread out on an 8 by 11, about as much as we could fit there, you see. And it suggests the infinite nature of all beings, not just the Arjunas of the world, who are humanity trying to make sense out of Maya. Why did we come here to the body? Sri Ramakrishna says to realize God. Isn't God our true nature? The pseudo-non-dualist would say, why do I have to be something when I'm already that? Why do I have to practice when I'm already that? You answer me that question from your present body. If you knew you were that, you wouldn't be in the body, you see. This body, you'd know this body is a sublation, a modification, a conditioning, an overlay. Shall I go on and repeat them again? It's not the true self. It's the small self. And the ego likes that, you see. Ego rushes to take refuge in dark little corners like the body. See? But this mind gets lit up, you see, and then the ego has nowhere to hide. That's why you couldn't find an ego in Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. They said, who are you? And he said, oh, I've asked myself that many times. I go looking for a me, but it's not in there. See? I can't find it. So I just call this a pillowcase. You're talking about this body? You're talking about me? You're talking to me? See? This is a pillowcase. And that's the way he actually saw it and knew it. So there are many kinds of pillowcases. There are individual, collective, and cosmic pillowcases. All the way up to Ishvara is a concept of the mind. God with form is a concept of the mind. When you sit in Vedanta or in Buddhism and darshanas like that, I hope you understand the word darshana means a path to clear seeing. When you sit in any of those traditions, then basically you're saying, I accept the mind-only schools. There's nothing here but mind. God is not a creator, so God isn't here. He isn't found creating things. You cannot create anything. It's always eternal. So I accept that the mind is at the foundation of all this. It's a chariot driven by a little occupant called the ego on the power of intelligence from place to place. Say, peace to all, from me no danger be to aught that lives, from those who dwell on high to those who lowly creep, I am the self in all.
No life, both here and there, do I renounce.
All life.
All life.
All life, both here and there, do I renounce. All earths, all heavens, all hells, all hopes and all fears, thus cut thy bonds, is how Vivekananda put it. So I renounce heavens, earths, and hells. Those are concepts in the mind. And I accept only divine reality, which is here and now, not subject to time and space, ever present, homogeneous, indivisible, divine reality. And that I am. Chidananda Rupaha Shivaham Shivaham. I am that Shiva. The jiva is Shiva, my teacher used to say from his position up on the raised dais, as we used to see him here in Portland, not far from here. The jiva is Shiva. Jivatman is Shiva, is the Paramatman. It's just covered over by sublations, modifications, conditioning, false superimpositions, you see. Take those away and there's no difference between God and mankind. That one who believes there's a distinction between God and mankind, between creature and creator, between nature and spirit, is laboring under a delusion. There is only one consciousness here, and it infills everything. And if thine eye be single, you shall know the truth about that. You see, you're going to have to raise your consciousness up the chakras to dwell in a higher stance than eating, drinking, and sex life. You see, from the ancestors on down. So, if you think the Upanishads are going to be tired and weary as a study, then I appeal to you by saying this, by quoting this out of the Upanishad. There is within the heart the bright space known to all. There let the worshipper meditate upon and realize the intelligent, imperishable, effulgent soul. The hollow canal called Sushumna lies through the two arteries of the upper palate and the nipple-like growth that hangs down from the midst of the two palatal arteries. It passes out at the crown of the head where the root of the hair is made to part, opening the skull in the center. That is the gate leading to the Supreme Lord. The worshipper at that time of his final departure gains his exit from the body through that passage and abides in fire, uttering to himself the mystical syllable, Bhur. He stays in air, sun then, and Brahman, uttering to himself Bhuvaha, Svaha, Maha, respectively. Having become the Virat Brahman, he obtains self-sovereignty and reaches the lords of the powers of sight, hearing, speech, and understanding. And after that he becomes immortal, the divine Brahman itself, whose body is the ethers, whose essence is truth, whose sport is the life force, who is the felicity of the mind, and who is abundantly endowed with peace. Is that boring to you? Are you? There's something I'm not seeing here, that humanity isn't rushing to hear this? See? I mean, even the life force, prana here, is his sport. See? He's sporting through many bodies. He's playing through many brains, but he himself is brainless. God has no brain, no body, no mind. So he has to borrow ours. We're the fools. See, we're dancing with the life force. And, you know, Swami Vivekananda said, we don't even, in the West, in America, we don't even know about life force. We're missing the tanmatras and prana in our cosmology. What to speak of gods and goddesses, which probably is going to be a far cry for most people because they've been spoiled by fundamentalist religion, so they're not going to go near that kind of ideation, you see. Spoiled by it. They should have been taught that all the gods and goddesses were within them, that when they were so-called idol worshipping, they were actually deifying objects, because objects are just Brahman. They're just saying, they're just pointing you, they're calling to you. Explore me, explore me. See? But if you explore them just with the senses, then it's no good, you see. It leads to attachment. But how about if you're a quantum physicist and you explore them with an electron microscope? What's that tell you? The same thing it told Buddha at 550 years before Christ, that they're empty. They're vibrating at a billionth of a second with particles that don't even have a life. So look at the object and say, get a life. See? Because it's not there. Dalai Lama said, you look at a tree and you're seeing the illusion tree. You look at the tree deeper, like science would, you're seeing the real tree. That's the swirling particle tree that these eyes can't see because they're defective by nature. They're outgoing only. See? They're limited. But if you look deeper than the, that's where you'd end up to be a nihilist, right? Or a voidist, you see. Oh, everything is empty. I'm a fatalist now, you see. But you're not looking to the third level of the thing. The third level of the tree is the Buddha nature tree, he says. That's what nobody sees. You see. So science can take you one step towards the truth. Vivekananda used to say, like this quote you see, first you see he's talking about science, modern science and its terrible onslaught. Then next he's talking about fundamentalist religion and its nonsense, superstitions. But if you were to ask me to say, oh, well, I'll pick science over fundamentalist religion. Science is a better friend to us because it's beginning to show us the nature of the object. And when you say the object is empty, is that supposed to make you depressed? No, it should make you dispassionate. It should make you detached. Empty how? Empty why? Empty because it has no substance, you see. It's just swirling particles changing at a billionth of a second. Empty because it cannot fulfill you. You have a desire for it, but it's stolen, it decays, it disappears, it stops working, it dies, any form. So there's your attachment and what it's going to meet in the end, you see. But it's not empty of essence. So you cannot become a nihilist or a voidist. And hopefully you won't become just a materialist or a secularist or just an intellectualist. See, but you'll see that abiding reality behind everything, which is the dance, which is the stage for the dancer, the foundation for all things. They call it in Samkhya Yoga the underlying substratum. You see, to find some big words to impress you. You see, what's the underlying substratum of everything? You see, it's the secret. You see. So if you're talking about secret of secrets, that's the chakra system. That's the mysticism of India. It's the most mystic path, is Kundalini Yoga. And who's behind it? The Divine Mother Kundalini herself. Kundalini Ma, Kali, Saraswati. Which, as I said yesterday, is the oldest name in any scripture. Carbon dated, historical, wherever you look, you'll have to go back to the oldest testaments of the Vedas to find her named. Umavati, Uma, you see, Himavati, the mother of the eternal snow mountains, the Himalayas. That's where you'll find this secret of secrets. See, Shristi Rahasya, the secret of all projectionism, is in Mother. And the background of that is the screen called Brahman, which she plays on. So beautiful sloka there. See, I jumped ahead. We haven't got to that sloka yet. But there you have it. Basically, whose body is the ether, whose essence is truth, whose sport is the life force, prana, who is the felicity of mind, and who abundantly endowed with peace. See? So what about that? Whose body is the ether? What is ether? In some methodologies, there's only 4 elements. They leave ether out of the picture because, of course, they can't see, taste, touch, hear, or smell it. Yet it's by the power of hearing that ether is working, as vibrations come across from my vocal cords and through the ether and bounce in your ears and come back, you see. So you hook up hearing with ether. And that's the most subtle of all senses in my tradition. You're supposed to, in yoga, if you practice it, and I think even the Hatha yogis know this, you're supposed to connect earth with smell, and water with taste, and fire with sight, and air with touch, and ether with hearing. See? So when you add the 5th element, ether, into the package, then you've got the Einsteins and so forth going, you see, I can do something with this. But they only go so far. They're only talking about the inner Russian doll, you see. You see 5 Russian dolls, right? There are 5 ethers. And the out one is called Bhutakasha. Akasha is the word for that. So you have to know a little Sanskrit in order to understand spiritual truth, because English doesn't have any equivalent words for these things. Akasha means space, but not just outer space, but Pranakasha, the space where your ancestors went when they dropped the physical form. That's mind, basically. You're going back into the mind. You're not going out into the object or a strand of the object, and certainly, I hope you know, we're not going out in space. We're going into inner space. That's the mystical journey. And these are called chakras. See? So the first space is Bhutakasha, outer. And take that little Russian doll with all the things in it, microorganisms, cells, atoms, molecules, trees, plants, animals, insects, man. Take all of that as a physical space and put it back into the next Russian doll, and that's called prana, the pranakasha. That's the second layer of ether, and nobody goes there, you see, except the yogis. Oh, the shamans a little bit, you see. But the yogis use it as a transitional point to go back to the manakasha, which is mental space, and then to the intellectual prana, which is Vijnanamaya kosha, or the Jnanakasha, they call it, Jnanakasha, see. That's where I live, in the Jnanakasha. What you see here is just an outer form of the Jnanakasha. So, come inside, see, come into the kingdoms of heaven within you. Explore some of the deeper chambers in the Father's mansion, because there you'll find the secrets to everything that's here, not out in the particle. Particles as far as you can get. That's going to lead you to nothingness, emptiness without any meaning. See? You want emptiness with meaning, that is essence, formless essence. And you'll find along the route, as this Upanishad is saying, that life force is going to be very powerful. You see, life force comes here from food. So we start with sacred food. Not just organic food, please. That's best if you can get it, but sacred food. You can eat organic food, and if you haven't blessed it, it's still going to turn into poison in your bloodstream. You must take that food and bless it. Not in the old Christian way, oh God, thank you. God has nothing to do with the food. This is nature that you're talking about, and the nature has a deity, and that deity is within you. You produce the food, so you might as well say thank you, self, for the food. See? And when you do, then you should reverence it. You see, you should reverence the process. Read the Gita. See, from rain, food comes. From food, all beings are delighted. The wise souls take the food and they offer it into the fire. Both fires. The fire in the belly and the fire in the fireplace, called a yagya, see, or a homa. Burnt leaves, burnt offerings, ghee, butter. You see. Why are they offering to that? To please the elementals. Because you can't get to the pranakasha without pleasing the elementals. There's a hierarchy of beings inside of you. Just like there are 5 akashas, there are beings in those akashas. Can you doubt it? How many beings are there in this akasha? I just named them for you. Microbes, atoms, cells, molecules, quarks, neutrons. That's just the unseen scene. See? What about the seen scene? Insects, animals, plants, human bodies. And there's plenty in the scene that's also obscene. Violence, war, and so forth. So you have the seen, the unseen, and the obscene. So that's all in the Bhutakasha. That's just one space. But Christ didn't sit there and tell John, you know, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. If he wasn't talking about the kingdoms of heaven within and how you step into them and know them. Sri Aurobindo said, like the amber stairs of birth and death, I come up and down them every time I take birth, consciously. Like Dalai Lama would, you see, in his incarnations, or any bodhisattva or jivan mukta or illumined soul would. They know these steps by heart, see, because they've practiced things like dissolving the mind stream back into Brahman. In sets of what? 5. He was first. 5s. Can you say 5? That's the secret of manifestation. 5 elements connect with 5 senses. Those 10 connect with 2 sets of 5s which are in your dream state. You have 5 elements in dream, you have 5 senses in dream. Those connect to the 5-fold mind, and 5 pranas are guiding you through them. you see. Yeah, 25 or 30 right there. Come to know them, and you know the secret of manifestation and non-manifestation. You know the secret of coming and going. And when you know that, you'll stand up like Vivekananda did and say, actually, I found out that coming and going is all mere nonsense. Where's the time when the soul will come, when all of time is in the soul? Where's the space to which it will move when all of space is in the soul? You're running a race in a dream inside of yourself, you see, and going nowhere faster. Now stop, cease, and be still. You know the bijam for that. Hum. If Divine Mother utters that, everything on the battlefield of relativity stops in its place. And the result is peace, 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 on all three levels. You know, I always say Shanti, Shanti, Shanti 3 times. That old refrain. You know, if you're at the Vedantic bar, and they're singing the old refrain, right? Give me a vid light, you know, it's you know, less filling, you see. More substance, less filling. Now let's sing the old refrain, Shanti, 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 and drink the nectar of enlightenment, you see. Sorry for the analogy. But you have to relate to the people of the day, you see, somehow. So they'll find that channel that splits the skull in half, you see. Awaken that Mother Kundalini, which gives you not just happiness, not just joy, and not just bliss, but unalloyed, uninterrupted bliss. See? Unalloyed, uninterrupted. You don't want your party spoiled, especially not that party. So, second akasha, prana. Third akasha, mind. Fourth akasha, intellect. Fifth akasha, spirit. It might as well not even be a space. It's infinite. Those are the 5 little Russian dolls, and each little Russian doll has a whole host of beings in it. That's, you find the Dalai Lamas and the Swami Vivekanandas and the great seers and sages and saints. You'll have to go back to the Gyanakasha at least to find their subtle body. And they're probably keeping it as a causal body, so that they can come to earth again when they choose. Otherwise, they'll just be a hailstone falling in an ocean. I'm gone and gone forever, Lord Buddha said. The last words he uttered. One thing you should know about this, I am the Buddha. It means I am awakened. I now know the secret of existence. The Tantrists call it Srishti Rahasya, the secret of projectionism and withdrawal. And how all that's nonsense, really, ultimately, that the soul never goes anywhere. So Vivekananda came amongst it this time. He says, you pick up a book, you read it, you put it down. That's it in a nutshell right there. See, basically, the soul picks up the book of nature, reads everything it already knows, plays a little bit with it in its mind, puts it down, but the soul never went anywhere as it read. And that's you reading this play of life, see. That's Advaita Vedanta. That's Zen Buddhism at its essence. That's the thread running through the pearls of the pearl necklace. Know that you're free for all times. That's why some people think, I've heard it, I'm free. But then later I say, what was that again? Mm-hmm. It was so subtle, it disappeared. And especially here in the midst of tamas, rajas, and sattva, that is, when my mind gets slothful, when my mind gets restless, and when my mind gets balanced and I'm in pleasure, it's all veiled from me. What do I care about the thread to the necklace? I want the pearls. So it's the most inscrutable piece or bit of wisdom that you'll ever hope or try to possess for yourself. Disappears, like she does, behind the scenes. So this has been sort of a recap of these things that we've taken yesterday. We went as far as to look at how words are so important. In Tantra is the like Bhakti Yoga, you know, it's the philosophy of the heart, Tantra. It wants to do rituals, it wants to deify objects. It wants to see the union of Shiva and Shakti coming together and the bliss that it experiences out of that. Divine couples, you see, or Tantra and so forth. But yet here it is talking about how it's all based on words. And those words are based on the word. Again, John was trying to understand. Go meditate in the Garden of Gethsemane, John. You have to know that if you're going to be a fisher of men. You think you can teach and not know the kingdoms of heaven within you? Sri Ramakrishna used to say, a teacher is a murderer. He kills the ego of human beings, and they don't want it killed. That's his task, you see. So he says, like a warrior, he has to man himself with every weapon possible. He's got a spear here, and then he's got a sword hanging here. He's got a dagger somewhere in his belt, He's got all sorts of weapons because he has to kill as many different personalities as come running towards him. Pop these egos so they can see the truth. So, but he says, but you, the seeker, the devotee, all you need is one weapon. It's called a pin knife, and you just cut your vein with it, and you're dead. See, you cut the vein of ignorance. So easy for you to kill your own ignorance, compared to trying to kill the ignorance of collective humanity or the ancestors, because the ancestors are just as pig ignorant as you are, coming back again and dying and being born again. For what purpose? How much fun can the merry-go-round be after 2 or 3 revolutions? All that food you ate comes spilling out, and you get nauseous on the merry-go-round ride. I want off. That's what Buddha said. You get out of the river, you see the same thing go by. But if you're in the river, you're going around with everything, and you never see that it's all cyclic. People never know that it's cyclic, that they live many lives, and those many lives are going on because of their ignorance. When we say ignorance in Danta, don't be offended. It means ignorance of the true nature of the self, as being birthless, deathless, timeless, as witness and all that. You could be much more intellectual and smarter than we are, but you'll still be ignorant as to the real nature of things. That's the strange thing about Maya. It covers, it distorts, but then it reveals. But there's a worker of Maya called Maha Maya. Get her on your side. So when you're reading an Upanishad, that's what you're doing. It's mother wisdom. And it's trying to convince you to take that penknife called wisdom and cut the vein of ignorance and let all the blood of birth, growth, disease, old age, decay and death and rebirth, lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, jealousy, delusion, fear, shame. Shall I go on? Vanity, okay. That's your particular one. Okay. All of those things that are your playmates at recess here in the world of relativity, vanquish them. See, get them behind me. Christ wasn't talking about a, two-horned being, red being with a forked tail and a pitchfork. You see, he's talking about all those devilish things that you should get behind you and water the flowers, not the weeds. Even St. Francis knew that. See, water the flowers, not the weeds. The mind has both. You think you can purify the mind, but it's got all this problem in it, you see. The wise ones transcend it. Purification of mind really is transcendence of mind as a intellectual sheath, a kosha, an upadhi. An upadhi does what? Sublates, covers, conditions, hides, obscures, distorts, makes something look other than what it really is. You want to look at everything as it really is. That's the yogi and the yogini's challenge. I must see it as it truly is. And then I must call a spade a spade. If it isn't copacetic or in step with the vision of Brahman as related in the scriptures by the seers, then it must not be real. The unreal never exists. The real never ceases to be. Knowing the difference between these two, between the wheat and the chaff, the seers have come to enlightenment. And they've come to enlightenment for all time. See? So we looked at how important words were. We looked at the aspects of space and time, We looked at principles that are in them, physical principles, psychical principles, spiritual principles, which are also in sets of fives, by the way, quintuplication process. We looked at the worlds. We looked at alphabets that contain letters and that each contain words that contain letters, and those letters then contain particles. That is, if you're just studying the word or the sentence, and then you're looking at the word, and then you say the alphabetic constituent is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but you're not looking at the particle of the letter, what A means. For that, you're going to have to go inside and split the bindu. You're going to have to look for a deeper meaning of the letter that makes up the word. That's the secret to knowing words. You've only seen the outside of it, and you've put it together in sentences, and those sentences become paragraphs, and then pages, and then books, and then libraries. See? And you've got thousands of them, but in books and temples, vain thy search. You never knew the simple property of the word A, the letter A, the matrika. Matrika means particle, but it also means mother. Mata, you see. So in the letter itself is the secret. A means creation, U means preservation, M means destruction. Om, everything is being projected, sustained, and withdrawn inside the Word, and the Word is eternal. That is, the Word was with God in the beginning, then it was in the beginning there was the Word, and then it was with God, then it was God. You see, there's 3 levels to the Word there. And John said, what the hey do you mean? See? Go to Gethsemane and meditate, John. You need to know the Word. And here's the problem with Maya. You give the Word to fishermen, see, or to somebody who hasn't really qualified themselves yet. What happens? They build the whole religion on origins. But we just said, Brahman doesn't have an origin. You, as a soul, does not have an origin. Guess what else doesn't have an origin? Nature. It's eternal. Everything is. It's the best 2-word English mantra you could possibly understand. Everything is. Or, my friend, the quantum physicist, astronomer, who was once a Swami, has a t-shirt that says, nothing doesn't exist. That's the opposite way of putting it. If you're the cup is half empty person, then you can say nothing doesn't exist, you see. If you're a cup is half full, you can say everything is, you see. Either way is fine. You can affirm or you can negate. But don't forget the one, the presence, who's doing the affirming and the negating is you. And you are eternal. So, Brahman is eternal, the soul is eternal, nature is eternal. Guess what else, unfortunately, is eternal? Maya. Yeah, that 4-letter word. Every time you see name and form spring into existence, Maya is along for the ride, you see. With the 6 passions, the 8 fetters, the 6 transformations, the 5 kleshas, the 9 antaryayas, and all their limitations, modifications, sublations, overlays. Hiding the truth, you see. Now, that took us to where we are today, the secret doctrine of conjunctions, which is why I started off saying, Namaste. If you want to know a new, refreshing definition for that old refrain, Namaste, then you'll know that it's like Ram bringing together his 2 hands in front of wisdom. You see? Namaste. He knows that everything is a sacred conjunction. That is, it began that way, and it began that way beyond beginnings. You see? It's not easy to put into words. Pity me, you see, because I have to try and, after having understood some of this, I have to try and put it into words for you, and you can't speak the imperishable Brahman. It's unspeakable. So you have to come down to the level of what's called qualified non-duality and use inference and use upalabdhi and use verbal testimony and use similitude and use inference and use tradition and hearsay and appeal to your witness consciousness. You can even use non-apprehensive. That is, if all of a sudden this microphone was not there, and I came back after the break, you see, like it wasn't here at the beginning of the class, then I would say, something's missing, see. That fact that something is missing is a proof of existence. If something's not there and you knew it once was there, then it means everything exists. That is, if God isn't there, then you know something's missing. And the sensitive person will feel that in time. See, all I have to do is raise their intellect a little bit and they'll feel what's missing in all of this. And this is precisely what's at the root of the question, what's the meaning of life? But you can ask what, where, when, and why, and you're on the wrong track. What's the W you need to ask? Who. Yeah. And who says who? An owl? No. Who is said by Ramana Maharshi. Who is said by Lord Vashishta. See, it's Atma Vichara, inquire into the true nature of the self. So if you say when, what are you talking about?
Time.
When you say what are you talking about?
Form.
Form. When you say where, what are you talking about? Space or locale, yes. And when you say, what's the other one? Where, when, what, and why? Causality. So people are asking why all the time, but they're never asking who. So all of these 5W questions, of all of them, who is the superior question, because you're getting to the root of the origin of this ego. You see, where I made that primal error of taking a form without knowing myself. They asked Vivekananda, should a man be reborn then, Swamiji? Because they had heard him speak for a few years. And he said, I certainly hope he will not until he can do so in full consciousness. What we want to see is beings coming back in full consciousness of the Dharma. There was a very wise person here in this room once with me. We were talking afterwards, and he said, Babaji, my bottom line, if I don't get enlightenment in this lifetime, is dharmic parents. And I said, good luck with that. If you're born, try not to be born in America then, you see. You may get moral parents or ethical parents, but it's a damn far cry so far in the first few hundred years of this country that you can find dharmic parents here. Dharma means they know the truth. And they've been set free by it. And then they're going to raise their children in it. You think they're going to raise their children to make money? To be happy? There's no happiness in this world. There was this beautiful Swami I met. That Swami was a woman. That woman was a Vietnamese person and was following a Hindu path, you see. So I was a friend of mine, so I talked with her. I haven't seen you for a long time. Are you happy? She said, Babaji, you know there's no happiness in this world, but I'm content. So, beautiful answer. And there's where you find dharmic company. And if your parents say that when you grow up, you see, you say, you're not the body. You're never born. I'm not your parent. You're not my child. Even Christ told you that. These aren't your children. These are souls under your care. That's basically what he said. And you need to get them up and out of Maya as soon as you can. You know how much you suffered at the clutches of ignorance and all the struggle you had to go through. So maybe try and alleviate that a little for them. Make their road a little smoother. You say, well, let them have their own experiences and let them suffer. Fine, I can concur with that to a point. But then, are you just going to come back again and again in cycles of suffering with no point to it, you see? What about just making them free and content? Getting them up and out of the notion that objects can fulfill you, for instance. So a little of that Dharma, Krishna says in the Gita, can save you from the great fear. What's the great fear of everyone? Yeah, that I don't exist. Nothing doesn't exist. This is what you have to come back with. Death is an illusion. There's a beautiful song in my tradition that sings, first line of the song. You might want to, rethink your lyrics of some of these songs you're putting out lately in the West. This first line of this song says, I have received a command from the Mother of the Universe that death must die. What was that again? Let's call that back up on YouTube. What was that lyric? You see, And the second line, you must put death in its own grave. Because, why? Because death is an illusion. The soul never dies. Well, all you needed to do is teach your children that at the early life, and they'll go through their whole life not fearing death. Not only not fearing death, but when it comes, they can put it in its own grave. Or maybe they already have, long since, put it in its own grave. And in that grave, they've made fear afraid of itself. So, sacred conjunctions, the coming together of the apparently two into one, or the apparently many into two, and those two into one. If you want to think of two-ness, then think of these two-nesses: form and formlessness, bondage and liberation. Don't think of these twos: pleasure and pain, life and death, see, virtue and vice. Those aren't going to get you very far. If you can think of form and formlessness, bondage and liberation, and so forth, then you can raise your mind to a higher level of duality, and that's the doorway into oneness. See, then I can be made single then. And you've left the realms of twos and manys, and you've come to the oneness of your heart. That's right where you do it, you see, right there at your heart. So namaste, it means the inherent oneness of all things. If I'm not walking around like this all the time, and I have to do this, then that's practice. You see. But if I'm walking all around all the time with the natural knowledge of the indivisibility of all things, then I'm in one place, in one mental asana, and it's called non-duality. And nothing can reach me. Nothing can, I'm impervious to all change, knowing it to be an appearance. See. So these are some of the great conjunctions here that the Upanishad talks about. Let's review them. In 5 minutes we have to break. So it starts out saying, as a review for some of you from yesterday, but a beneficial review, we shall expound in order the sacred doctrine of conjunctions based on the 5 perceptible objects: universe, light, learning, progeny, and self. The observation of these 5 objects are together called the great combinations Mahasamitaha. The teaching concerning the universe is this: the earth is the prior form, the firmament the posterior form, atmosphere is the junction, and air is the means of joining. You know, this is sort of like saying, I've left earth independent of my sense of smell, without knowing that from my sense of smell, earth was created. The God of smell determined in me that the earth would become visible so that I could use it, you see. And the same with water and taste. So these are things I need to meditate upon, see. One should meditate on existence, knowing in the mind that all these interior relations. So the first meditation in Sankhya and in Yoga, and is also advised by Buddhism and Vedanta, is to meditate on the tattvas. Tattva Gyan is knowledge of principles. Upasana Dhyan is worship of deities. Why not put these two together, I'm asking. See? Why just be a Jnani or just a Bhakta? See? Why not be a Jnana Bhakti? See? Why not use both wings of the bird? Because you can get off the ground with both wings. You ever tried getting off the ground with one wing? I suppose it's possible. I mean, it's possible. I heard the other day that 1 + 1 can equal 1. And well, how is that? In the case of gum, 2 pieces of gum. So there's always a way out, you see, a higher way of thinking. So meditate on these. They want you to meditate on air, earth, fire, water, and ether. Because if you drowned and you start meditating on water and you have fear of water, you'll find it out. You'll be meditating on the 5 elements. Oh, I don't know about water, you see. Oh, aversion, you see. Why is that aversion in me? Why do I fear water or land? Because I probably died in a landslide. Maybe my last lifetime was in Pompeii, see. And I decided not to venture back into the body till now. But I still have with me this samskara, the memory of a death I had, or many deaths I had. That's why one Labrador will jump in the water chasing the coconut. My other Labrador won't, you see. And I owned these 2 dogs once. One was fearless. One wouldn't go near water. See. Why is that? Did God bless one and curse the other? Well, God had nothing to do with it. See, there's a memory in that little dog's psyche of drowning in water, and it didn't like it. See, it stays away. So you meditate on the conjunctions is not just some highfalutin philosophical philandering. See, you want to know these, and when you know them, you escape your fear of them. So check them all out and see if there's any fear lingering in you, and make it afraid of itself. And you'll do the same thing with death. When meditate on death every day. Vivekananda said, you may have been taught in the West here that by your parents that death was a morbid subject, don't go there. But in India, we meditate every day on death. We start by saying, I'm not the body, I'm not the senses. Now I'm not the mind, I'm not its thoughts, I'm not the intellect. Oh, guess what? I'm not the ego either. And guess what? I still exist. When I take all those away, I exist. So that I, all those things are not the real I. Well, the real I, please stand up. Right, nobody moves. Because the real I is motionless. It doesn't move, it doesn't have to, it's already everywhere. What do you think the word all-pervasive means? It's one of the best words in English to describe Brahman, all-pervasive. You could say to yourself, I think I'll go find God. Before you even had the thought, God is already there. It's how all-pervasive. In the Upanishads it says, faster than the fastest, slower than the slowest, higher than the highest, lower than the lowest. It outstrips all that runs. That's because of its all-pervasive nature. You start thinking of it that way, then you have become a knower of Brahman. So that's how to meditate on earth, the firmament, that would be the stars, the sky, the atmosphere, the loka, that is the akasha, and the air that brings them together. You see, life force that brings it. It's already talking about prana. Man does not live by bread alone. What did Christ mean? Who in Christendom has ever unwrapped that statement properly? Man does not live by bread alone. The deepest thinkers there would say, oh, lives by God then. No, God cannot be the source of anything. God is an unsourced source. God has nothing to do with name, form, time, space, and causality. That's the mind that has something to do with that. God is always transcendent. And you must raise yourself to that. That's called nirvana, or samadhi. And if you don't believe me, ask the father of yoga, the father of Vedanta, the father of Buddhism, father of Samkhya, the father of Tantra. They all concur. So man does not live by bread alone. What's it mean? It lives by life force, prana. And prana is here, and it's in the body, and it's in with the ancestors, and it's in dream. It takes you through subtle nadis at night when you dream. You're not going out in heaven in the firmament outside. You're going to the inner firmament, and that's conducted by nadis. You can't just go into hatha yoga and say, oh, I'm going to open my nadis. You're purifying your physical nadis. But the whole point of that is to know that inside, and I'm quoting the Upanishads here, inside of every physical nerve there are 100,000 subtle nadis, and those conduct a force called prana. And that prana takes you from waking to dreaming to deep sleep back to waking, and it takes you to your realm of the ancestors when your body dies and when it's born. That's the secret of creation, is that everything is so subtle. It's beyond the atomic particle. You must let go of your death grasp on the atomic particle to find the kingdoms of heaven within. And dreaming is a metaphor for that. And deep sleep, another metaphor. So we'll talk about that in terms of these other conjunctions after our break. So here we pause for 15 minutes. The live streaming audience can look at these charts on their screen, and you may also look at them at the break too. Namaste for your kind attentions. We have returned, and our subject is the Taittiriya Upanishad. This is our second class on this particular scripture. That's called Shruti, if you look into Upanishads. Shruti means to hear, to be heard. And then you follow it up by yukti, reasoning about it, or sometimes it's called manana, rolling it around your mind. That's how you, in India, you would come to roll it around in your mind with these 6 proofs of truth and so forth, and with the secret of letters, matrikas, varnas, not just varnas, alphabets, but letters and then particles of letters. And that's how you go deep inside an interior thing, rather than go deep inside, or in this case further out with an exterior thing by finding its particles. The interior particles are there too. And they're flowing in streams of intelligence. Jnana matra is the word. That's the name of my next book, which will be out in October when I come back. Jnana matra. It's an ancient word for atom, if you will, or particle, matra. And it's also very much aligned with mother, again. And jnana means wisdom. So these particles of wisdom are streaming, and if they come very, very far out in their stream, they'll turn into objects. And that's your waking state. And if you dissolve them back in meditation to dream, then they become dream objects. And then you dissolve them back entirely into deep sleep, then you realize it's a seed. It's a seed. So when you're in deep sleep, you're walking on a bed of seeds, just like you would go out into a forest and walk upon a bed of seeds in the springtime or after fall, that are just there in potential to go through winter and spring up again in spring. They spring in spring. So deep sleep is the seeds for all things. That's how you know that nothing dies. First, nature doesn't die because it just goes back into abeyance. It's held back in the mind. And then when the mind cycles begin to happen again, then those seeds are watered by the intelligence of the mind, and they turn into particles, and they stream out through all the different levels of being, as we were saying, rishis, gods and goddesses, celestials, ancestors, humans, animals, insects, plants. My teacher used to say, in plants, consciousness is dreaming. In insects and animals, it's partly awake. In the human being, it's awake, but in the seer, it's fully awake. So there again, same Atman, same light and everything, it just modified or sublated or by the form that it's identifying with. Identifying with in terms of, say, a cow or a camel, see, because they're going to come back and eat grass and thorny bushes again and again through lifetimes because they have a desire for that. That's why there's so many cows and camels. But in the terms of human beings, at least ones that are more enlightened, they don't identify with the form. They just take it on and slough it off. And since they do that every night in waking, dreaming, deep sleep, there's no reason why they can't do it in what's called birth, life, and death. Krishna says that in the Gita, like a child taking on and putting off clothes as it outgrows them, so too the enlightened soul takes and puts on bodies any times it wants. So what's absent there is the fear quotient, the doubt quotient, the ignorant quotient, and the brooding on all three. Brooding on doubt, ignorance, and fear is what thickens the curtain of ignorance, called the cloud of unknowing in the Buddhism, you see, or the curtain of nescience. You stop brooding on it, it tends to thin, and when it thins, you can almost see reality behind the appearance. It's a matter of your perception. Your senses become pure, your body pure, and your mind pure, and then the location becomes pure, and then you see all as Brahman. Put Sri Ramakrishna here and an ignorant man here, same Atman, see, same body, same brain and so forth, same blood, same elements, you see. But one is living in the realization that all this is Brahman, and the other is living in the false ideation that this is a world. But it's not a world. It's neither a good nor a bad world. Saying a good world is like saying hot ice. There's no such thing. But that's just in terms of looking at it through the telescope of morality or ethics. Dharma and adharma, virtue and vice, that kind of thing, you see. But looking at it from the terms of what it is, there is no such thing as a world. It's all a mental projection. The mind is the projector, but this backdrop screen is Brahman, and the screen never changes, no matter how much the projection does. So in that case then, you come to understand the nature of mind as projection, waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and so forth. And you understand the gist of the Upanishads, because you heard them first, Shruti, then you reasoned about them, Yukti, and then you realized them, Nididhyasana. So those are the three proofs of truth, Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhava, or in another age they called it Shravana, to hear, Manana, to roll it in the mind, and Nididhyasana, to gain the direct experience of it. And a lot of that process, according to the rishi who, it's hard to find a word for it, founded, realized, authored this particular Upanishad, is found in the early shlokas in this Secret of Creation by the power of Maha Samhitaha, that is, these great conjunctions. Right now we're calling them universe, light, learning, progeny, and self, or ego self. And they want you to meditate on each of these five, not just to know that they are considered the five great conjunctions, but inside of them, just like inside of a letter, there's a lot to know. Inside of each one of those, there are these powers of conjunction working. You might as well call these gods and goddesses. There's a god in water, and there's a god in taste, right? The senses are called Indriyas, and Indra is the lord of all gods. So each of your senses is a little god, and it has a great power. You put together 7, 8, 9 billion people all seeing, and then sight has a great power, and tasting, and touching, and hearing. You're talking about a fantastic amount of power. What to speak of putting the ancestors together in that collective consciousness. So, as with anything then, there's much below the surface, and you'll find that they think of that as something that's conjoined. It's not something that you have to bring it together. If you have to bring it together, it means you forgot that it was naturally conjoined. See, this is naturally conjunction. Like I said, you just go around with this mental asana all the time. But you come into contact with a divisive faction, then you have to go like this, you see. And that kind of conjoining or bringing together is an act then. If you've never done that, then you've forgotten entirely that all is one. Sarvosmi. All is one. So they teach then, not just the five conjunctions, but their anterior, posterior, and joining powers, you see. And we looked at those in terms of the first. And now we're looking at this one, learning. It says, or no, we're looking at light next. It says, the teaching on light is as follows. Fire is the prior form, sun the posterior form, water is the junction, and lightning is the means of joining. So basically, they want you to know that light in Vedic tradition is one thing, and it's the light of intelligence. That's the Chit in Sat Chidananda, by the way, if you've heard of that word. The great Sat existence, the great Chit, the great intelligence, and Ananda, the great bliss, are three different schools. The Advaita wants to put them all together and say, well, that's probably the best description of the indescribable Brahman we can come up with for you, that it's pure existence, pure intelligence, and pure bliss. Put those three together, and you've got peace, man. See? Peace. They got it wrong. You see, that's why they're having so much trouble. They're still involved with duality. They think war and peace, but they don't think conjunction peace. You see, everything is already one. All you need to do is realize it. You can't make it one. It was one before you even started. You can't become Brahman. You are Brahman. So then you have to do practice to realize it. Many people jump to the chase. Oh, I'm Brahman, and I don't need to do anything. Well, that's not what we mean. The seers have told you over and over again, and they've come and struggled in front of you in order to realize that you have to do a practice, because the Ashtavakra Samhita Avadhuta Gita would evince words like this. They would say, the self is not made pure by the sixth limb yoga. The self is not made pure by bowing at the Guru's feet. The self is not made pure by destroying the mind's waves in meditation. It's already pure. So practice and all of these things are secondary means, but if you don't do them, then the mind will never be clear, and then it will never realize the Atman. So you're working on this culprit. The mind is thought, ego, intelligence, and duality. Manas, dual mind. With dual mind, you have to make it one. With intellect, you have to sharpen it and hone it. With ego, you have to deflate it. So light comes, you see. And with chitta, you have to make it charged up. Sri Ramakrishna said, charge up the chitta, it'll become like a hot air balloon. Throw out the sandbags and you're off and floating, you see. But if you don't, the mind tends to go like rainwater, falls and seeks the lowest place to settle. You might have noticed, by looking out in the world, some of these minds who have settled to the lowest place. It's ignoble. It's not fitting for the truth-seeking soul. So, what follows next? In other words, to conclude, all is light, and this light is the light of intelligence. It manifests as lightning, and sun, and moon, and so forth. But it starts off as light interior. Light transcendent would be a better way of saying. Now the next conjunction, what now follows is the observation on learning. Teacher is the prior form, pupil is the posterior form, learning is the junction, imparting of instruction is the means of joining. That's probably pretty understandable for everyone. This is how one should meditate on learning. That is, you can't learn anything unless you have a good teacher. You're a good student. You enter into the study, and then you get the wisdom transmitted to you. Transmission, discourse, lecture. See, that's kind of the level of it. If you're getting a transmission, you're sitting in front of a teacher who knows the Dharma and can transmit it to you. Shrotriya, see. There are 4 qualities a teacher must have. First, akamahata, doesn't have any desire for you except that you get enlightenment. 2, Shrotriya, must be able to transmit the essence of the scriptures to you, not just the letter of the law, but the essence. 3, Abhrijana, must live a pure and unostentatious life. 4, must be a knower of Brahman. If your teacher has those 4 qualities, you can bow and touch the feet, as I did to my teacher, Swami Shishananda, here in Portland. The first one I found that I saw had all 4. I'd met many people. You know, I was founder of Jaima Music and toured long before Krishna Das and Jayutal and other people were doing this. Jaima Music in the 70s and 80s was touring and singing bhajans and stotrams everywhere across the United States and other parts of the world. So I met many, many teachers at the time, and I found out that some of them had one of those qualities, some of them had 2 or 3, some of them had none of them. They were fakes. And then my teacher, when I saw him, wow, there, see, he's got Shrotriya. See, he can transmit to you the essence of the scriptures. I didn't find that in other teachers. They were teachers that were saying, oh, the word's not important. I beg your pardon? That's the easy way out. It's casting Mother Wisdom behind you. You're going to insult Ma Saraswati like that, then look forward to a host of deluded lifetimes. See? Or lifetime as a scholar or a pundit, because they're very learned, but they know nothing. So this is how to squeeze the most out of your orange, as Vivekananda said, and he was very orange, as you know, inside and out. He was the superlative sannyasin. So this is how to meditate on learning. If you have all 4 of these elements there, then you're a qualified student. And then Krishna will say, like he said to Arjuna, Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprasyena sevaya upadekshanti te jnana jnaninas tattva darshanaha. The sincere student will approach the illumined teacher via humility, prostration, and service. Then the wise ones will initiate them into the highest wisdom. Tattva darshanaha. Tattvas, these are tattvas. If you know them, you'll go to your death in full knowledge of how the universe gets projected and withdrawn. You'll never be lost again. You'll have a conscious death. You'll detach yourself from the five elements without trouble, and you'll find yourself in an inner akasha of learning. See? That kingdom of heaven inside that you didn't know much about, you see. Vivekananda said, it could be that once I leave my body I will feel so free, but I will not stop coming back into the body. I will come back 1,000 times if I can help even one person to get free. He means free of this old witch, the world, free of this imposition called the body, free of these ignorant senses, you see, that cling to things that are empty. Where's the reason in that? So learning is important. Higher learning is essentially important. Aparvidya, parvidya. That's India's teaching. Now next we go to progeny. You want to know the secret or the conjunction of souls and their offspring? Then here is what they say. Mother is the prior form, father is the posterior form, progeny is the junction, and procreation is the means of joining. One should meditate on progeny. I would say probably the instruction around this is that there are people in India who actually conceive of children mentally before they come. It's not just, oh, let's get together and procreate and children will pop out, you see, and then we don't have to even guide them or teach them. But they're thinking, oh Lord, come to me in the body. I want the divine child. I want Krishna as my child. I want Ram as my child. Gopala, Ramlal. I want the Divine Mother as my daughter. King Himalaya got. And in that case then, they're thinking ahead of time. They're doing austerity before they join. See? And they're preparing the way for a soul because they know somewhere inside of them that souls are looking for parents. Like I said about my friend, you see. Bottom line for me is I must have dharmic parents if I don't get enlightenment in this lifetime. So you're going to be looking for those dharmic parents. Camel souls look for camel parents because they know the camels are eating thorny bushes somewhere. And they love the taste of thorny bushes, you see. Cows are eating grass. So these insects are bits of prana, you know. So basically, without this brain stem, this human body and mind, you can't make any spiritual evolution. You just go around the same form again. Rare probably indeed that an animal would have such love and such kindness that it would transform or transmigrate into a human form. Buddhism, Hinduism both allow for that possibility, that there's a transmigration going on there, not just from human to ancestor, but from animal to human kingdom. Why not? You see, I was once with Scholar Rinpoche, Tibetan teacher, and he was teaching us on Maui, and basically he said, I treated these animals when I was a young boy in the mountains of Tibet. I treated my farm animals so carefully. I loved them, I fed them by hand, petted them every day, talked with them. Then, when I was later to come to the West, I saw a lot of souls come to me, and I realized some of them were those animals that I had treated so well in my youth in Tibet. Well, there was a kind of a pin drop silence in the auditorium about that time, as people considered that, you see. Gee, I'm one of his students. That's why I like the color green. Anyway, a sort of an aside to that, but my point being here is that when you talk about progeny, you're preparing for the soul in India. And and that preparation is meditation and purification and austerity and so forth, then you get a higher grade of soul looking for you. Fourth of these conjunctions, next, that was progeny. Fifth of these conjunctions, what follows is concerning the self. The lower jaw is the prior form, the upper jaw is the posterior form, speech or the vocal organs are the junction, and the tongue is the means of union. So I'm talking about this self, Atman they call it, or back then they weren't so specific about Atman, Anatman, or personality, Brahman. It was all Atman to them in a sense. So it was in a time when people knew that when you spoke about the self, you didn't just mean the body, you also meant the Atman. Nowadays that's not there. You mean either body or personality or ego or something when you say self, and you exclude anything of a higher nature. So you have to nowadays define it. Atman, Anatman. When the Buddhists say Anatman, they mean the ego. You see, when they don't want to say God or reality, so they'll say Buddha nature. You see? Well, that same Buddha nature to the Vedantists is Atman, and that same non-self is ego. See? So it's just a matter of terms, terminology, coming to agree about terminology. Basically, the teaching has been there forever. You separate the wheat from the chaff, basically. The essential from the non-essential, the real from the unreal. They say it in different ways, but it has to be done, at least on this world. So these are called the five great combinations. The one who meditates on these great conjunctions, as expounded herein, will attain progeny, wealth, food, and the like, and will also attain the happy abode of higher existence, or a higher heaven. This has been partially retreat, but we've actually finished out the chart there. Let's see. Top quote, "The illumined seer who revealed this essential wisdom by his own deep meditation, having grouped the various elements of existence, declared that the entire universe of gross and subtle worlds is based in sets of fivefold principles, and that one set of fives enables and preserves the next set of fives." That's important too. See, like I said, from the five senses, earth and air and fire, water, and ether could coagulate. But earth, air, fire, water, and ether started out as thoughts in God's mind, called solidity, liquidity, light, and so forth. There were words for them, you see. But they had to come down the spectrum a long time and take on grosser and grosser vibration until those very thoughts, the very thought of liquidity, became the actual element water. See? And there was no God involved in that, and no devil keeping it from happening. It was a natural manifestation from an initial conjunction. The oneness of everything we talk about. New Age has it right, but they don't know what they're talking about when they say it. You have to go back into the revealed scriptures to find out the real glue, you see, the real cement of all this, the wisdom that makes you a seer and that frees you from misconceptions about it. Sets of fives then. The seer opens up cosmic vision by knowing this principle of sets of fives based on the facts known to everyone. Everyone knows these things nowadays: air, earth, fire, water, and ether, touching, tasting, hearing, smelling, seeing, so forth, but they haven't conjoined them in their essence, you see, or known that they are conjoined in essence, and they haven't made the connections in between. So you're living a scattered life, random. See. Everything about it is random, and your science declares, oh, it's all random, it's all chaos. Yet everything's being held together by something. If you're a little bit naive, you say, it's love. See, love's holding it all together. But how can you love something that changes constantly? You have to love the changeless, because the rest will leave you in the lurch, which is why you detach, which is why you renounce, which is why everyone from Vashishta to Christ to Swami Vivekananda came as a renunciate. That is, they deified everything and withdrew from it. By knowing it, they became free of it. By not knowing it, they became bound into it. And that included nature, and it included the ancestors, and it included the circle of rebirth called the Kala Chakra. And it includes everything, unless you know that thread that holds everything together, that necklace of pearls. So a little bit of a conclusion here, and a reminder that everything is sets of fives. 5 elements, 5 senses, 5 dream senses, 5 dream elements, 5-fold mind, 5 pranas, 5 cosmic laws, 5 conjunctions, 5 fingers on your hand, 5 toes on your feet. See? Are you giving yourself a hint of this or not when you come out of the body? Hi. High five. See? So everything is pointing to the great doctrine of quintuplication. Pancha karna, that everything was caused by sets of fives. And as this Upanishad says in this Rishi, one set of fives enables and preserves the next set of fives. Beautiful. Again, if you know this, you're a knower of the cosmic process, and you will not be bound anymore into it. You can play. That play is called Leela. You heard that word, Leela? It's sport, the sport of consciousness. When you're through sporting, you can be the whole thing, and you don't have to move in sport anymore. You're silent, just sitting and watching, observing, sakshi. You become the detached witness consciousness of everything. Imagine how blissful God is, if you could turn it into a form. See, it's the bliss in everything. You see, there's an Upanishadic statement that says the bliss of a man is 100-fold. Bliss of a god is 100-fold more. Bliss of a rishi or a manas or a higher heavenly being 100 times that, and the bliss of Brahman 100 times that, Brahma, Lord Brahma. But then the bliss of a illumined soul is 100 times all those. So it begins to expand in its capacity to know Brahman. And then if you expand that much, the balloon of ego just pops, and you are that. Let's read the final quote here. One should meditate on the elements that compose the universe, namely earth, intermediate space, heaven, sky, the 4 and 8 directions, fire, air, sun, moon, and stars, waters, herbs, plants, trees, ether, and one's own body, including skin, muscle, bone, and marrow. Then meditate on the 5 senses and the 5 pranas. Then contemplate Om, the universal form of compliance, which is Brahman. Well, there's wisdom in a few sentences, you see. But point being, you must meditate on them, not just take them for granted. You yourself must bring them together as they are. Otherwise, it might end in a scattered existence. A scattered mind or fragmented mind. That's how the father of yoga puts it, Patanjali. So it reminds me that Sri Ramakrishna used to say that, on the outside is the body, and the inside is the bone, and inside the bone is the marrow. So he's saying you must go 3 levels deep to find the essence of things. That is outer, inner, and transcendent, or if you want to put it in terms of bodies, gross, subtle, and causal. You have 3 bodies, and each of those the first 2 of those have 5 senses, gross and subtle, and 5 elements to play in. So knowing this is one of the best ways to become a knower of cosmology in order to hook it to philosophy. There are other ways, no doubt. This is the ancient way, one of the most thorough, I think, tattva principles. And it doesn't take that much time to memorize these and meditate on them. People are spending much, much more time on subjects that are much harder, really. Have to memorize much more, and then you come here and you say, "Oh, there's this some Sanskrit words. I can't do that." You see, I gave you one word. It makes it all easy. See, and you have been involved in it for lifetimes, and you're the producer of it, and you don't know it yet, or you're attributing it to God or devil. Now let's get the mental asana together. See, and know that the soul is at the foundation of this. Its mind is at the foundation of projection. So, meditate on all those things then, the Rishi in the Taittiriya Upanishad is saying. Now, and to finish in the remaining half hour, let's move a sloka forward to lesson 4. In this weekend, we will have accomplished 4 lessons of this first chapter 1, which is the 12 lessons. So we are making headway, actually, even though I'm very loath to move past a lesson, as you know. I like to just keep going on it. But we will move forward here till this lesson 4, which says, that one who is the most excellent in the hymns of the Vedas, whose form is manifold and who has sprung up in all splendor from the sacred hymns, may he, that Supreme Lord, cheer me with intellectual vigor. O Lord, may I be the possessor of immortal revelation. May I be able and active in the body. May my speech be sweet and agreeable to the highest degree. And may I, with my ears, listen abundantly so that I may learn. Thou art the sheath of the Supreme Being. Pray, preserve my learning. You might recognize this as Om Bhadram Karnabihi Sriniyama Devaha Bhadram Pasyema Akshabirya Jatraha. It's sort of a modification of that peace chant which says, may we see with these eyes what is good and spiritually. May we hear with these ears what is noble and uplifting. And may we live lives that are beneficial to ourselves and to others. Basically is there, hidden in that one sloka. It's a peace chant, so peace, 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 man. Now, the portions of it, as we take it apart, the paragraph into sentences, that is, I'd say the first main point there is has to do with the hymns of the Vedas, of course. We're studying those, though, in this Upanishad. The first thing that struck my mind was that peace chant. The second thing was, thou art the sheath of the Supreme Being. And then third, may pray, preserve my learning. When you say preserve my learning, you don't mean just in this lifetime. That's one thing you should think about, that you want to remember this in your next lifetime. Because since you forgot it last lifetime, you're having to sit here listening to this boring fellow talk about it, you see. 3 hours a day for years, you see. So don't fall into the clutches again of that fellow called a guru. Sri Ramakrishna said the mind must become its own guru. Of course, when you have a guru like Swami Sheshanandaji, like I had, then you have eternal gratitude and loyalty to him and to the whole order that came before him, right up to Swami Vivekananda. So that's called a sacred lineage, and you're part of that. Then you have friends in high places. See, you have friends in high places, and you can commune with them. I feel Swami Sheshananda teaching through me still. I feel Swami Vivekananda teaching through me. I feel Lex Hickson, our founder, my good friend, my mentor, teaching through me, as if Babaji has been replaced. One of my relatives didn't see me for years, and met me again. He said, my God, you've been co-opted. Who took you over? And I said, what do you mean? I've always been this way. So, pray, preserve my learning means from past lifetimes. May what we learn here today continue on and grow in abundance and implant itself in our intellects so that we remember it at the time of death and also at the time of our next rebirth, if we should have to take one. You have a choice there. Basically, there are 3 choices. An ignorant life of suffering. Suffering means joy, too, pleasure and pain. And second, a dharmic life, where you're learning. And 3, a divine life, where you're one of these great souls. You might say a 4th choice, no life. See? Have no hope for me forevermore. I am gone and gone forever. In other words, you've become a videhamukti. You'll never take a form again. You will be a hailstone that fell in the ocean. Zip, that's it, you see. Just before it fell in the ocean, it shouted out all its learning to everyone. You see. I'm going to merge. Bye. You won't see me in form again. Last chance. Last tag. You see. So Pray preserve my learning. I have that to say about that. What I have to say about is thou art the sheath of the Supreme Being could probably be explained in this beautiful way of looking at it from another Upanishad, the Mandukya Upanishad. And calling up my copy of that here on this snazzy modern convenience, we see there that the Rishi in the Mandukya Upanishad, that's Gaudapada commented on it, talks about life in this way. There are 7 limbs, 19 mouths, and in 3 states. So there you have the 3 states, basically waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. And then the 4th is samadhi. So there are 4 states really to your consciousness, with 4 bodies that go along with it. Gross, subtle, and causal, as I said. In the gross state, you see, you have these 19 mouths. That is 5 elements, you see them here. 5 karmendriyas, active senses. 5 knowledge senses, gyanendriyas. And a 4-fold mind. If you add cosmic mind to that, you also get a 5. Through these, he enjoys the worlds. That is, the embodied soul, the world. So you have all 5 of these in both the waking and dreaming state. So this is what's called Vaishvanara, the enjoyer of the cognitive, outwardly cognitive state, with the waking state as his land, as his field. And the 2nd quarter, Taijasa, inwardly cognitive, with the dream state for his field. That's the A and U of Om. Okay? That's how they designate the word Om, by letter. And these are the particles in the letter. See, they all have words inside of words, meanings inside of meanings. They've taken it apart, like a good Samkhya scientists they are, and examined it. So both of these are 7-limbed and have 19 mouths. So what are the 7 limbs? Basically, it's that beautiful chant that goes Agnir Morta Chakshusi Chandra Surya. You know that one? Vishaha Shrotrivak Vivrita Shavedaha. Vayu, air, prana, life force, Prithivi, earth, and so forth. That chant is here. Earth is his feet, water is his lower organ, the sky his body, the air and wind his breath, the sun and moon his 2 eyes, and his head is the heavens. See? So that's the, you're talking about the Virat form here, and then you have the cosmic form too. So waking and dreaming, A and U of Om, have 19 mouths and 7 limbs. As you leave the waking state, you lose 10 of these, and then you're only left in the other 10, or the other 9, 10 if you talk about the cosmic element. Then your mouths also become subtler and subtler, through which you enjoy. Now you're enjoying through the dreaming state. You're still eating food in a dream. You're still flying in a dream. You're still dipping into water in a dream. You have various dreams. So there are 5 elements there too, and those are part of your dreaming state. So you're called Vaishvanara, outwardly cognitive, and then you're called Taijasa, inwardly cognitive. Same being in 2 different forms, in 2 different worlds. A-U and Om. Then the 3rd quarter is Pragya, the intellectual, with deep sleep as its field. Notice that they leave off using he or her or any gender. It, they say. It now is genderless, so it is unified, full of bliss, and forms the gateway to definite cognitions. So that's the deep sleep state, or they call it pragya. Pragya is an interesting word. We shouldn't take it the way some of the Buddhist schools take it, or taking it more in terms of highest wisdom. But here, the Rishi is using it as a sort of a mass of indefinite cognition. Sometimes you've heard it said that in deep sleep everything is there, but you're not quite aware of it. My teacher used to say that, seer goes into deep sleep and comes out a seer. But a fool goes into deep sleep, comes out a fool. He doesn't know what he saw. You thought about it? I mean, deep sleep, you can dream for 8 hours and be what do they call it? nervous wreck. But you can deep sleep for 20 minutes and be fine for 24 hours thereafter. Deep sleep has that healing, salubrious kind of element in it, even for the person who is not aware of what's there. That formlessness is there, but there's a sort of light there that's still covering, you see, with a veil. Life is a many-colored dome that stains the pure white light of reality, the poet Shelley said. Earth's shadows fly, heaven's light remains. Life is a many-colored dome which stains the pure white light of reality. So life and mind, you see, are a dome of many-colored glasses. And the light of reality is outside of it, one, and it's hitting that dome called mind, and it refracts and comes through it and turns into different worlds and different objects. So even the poet Shelley and some of our Western savants have been on the side here of the Upanishads and taken in their learning. My goodness, that was a quick study, wasn't it? So basically that chart has already been digested by you. Now, may the Lord preserve your learning around it. Now let's take the last sloka down there. Gaudapada, oh my goodness, my teacher always used to say at the beginning of most of his lectures, I salute Gaudapada, for he was an illumined soul. Gaudapada was Shankara's teacher's teacher, and the great non-dualist who commented on this Upanishad that impressed both Eastern and Western philosophy alike. It's called Gaudapada's Karika on non-duality, and it's basically on the word Om. So Gaudapada says, all things existing within and without are products of imagination, their differentiation being due to association with the various kinds of senses. The Lord verily imagines the souls, the entities of various sorts, external, objective, internal, subjective. As one cognizes, so one remembers. So that witness conscious in all of us, if it engages in dream, then it's going to take on forms, and then through those forms it'll have experiences. Gaudapada is calling this projects of your imagination. And so you may go to the psychiatrist and he'll put you on his couch and say, oh, that's a figment of your imagination. But the Vedantist will sit up and say, you don't know what you just said, doctor. Yes, this is less imagination and it's more visualization. My teacher used to say that. Yesterday's dreams become today's imaginations. Today's imaginations become tomorrow's visualizations. So he was asking you to not just watch a figment of your mind float by, but seize it and then meditate on it. And that's intelligent particles, you see. If they're flowing along and you have the wherewithal, then you grab one of those intelligent particles, you split it, and it implodes. My teacher used to say, he'd come out of the back room, in a grumpy mood, and he'd say, the West has split the atom to release a terrible power for destruction. That was his theme for the week, you see. For the month, maybe. But then he'd say, but Sri Ramakrishna came and he split the curtain of Maya to release the highest benefit for all living beings. So he's talking about a different kind of atom. You split this atom, it's an exterior explosion, and people get devious thoughts about it, you see. But you split the inner atom of the intelligent particle with the electron microscope of your own intelligence, your own focus, your own concentration, that will implode. And guess what you get from that? Bliss. That's why they're always in such bliss. Ramakrishna is sitting around, loincloth his only possession, not knowing where his next meal will come from, see, not as pure and innocent as a child, weeping tears of bliss for Mother Kali at one moment and going into non-dual samadhi in the next. You'd ask him, what's it like, non-dual samadhi? He would go, and he's gone for 2 hours, you see. You have to wait there. He's no fun, you see. Take him to the zoo, sees the lion. You have to hold him up. He comes back later to his senses. Why did you go into samadhi just seeing a lion? Because that's Durga's mount. Saw a man sweeping once, went into samadhi. Sir, why did you go into samadhi just seeing a sweeper? Because I saw the man, I saw the broom, I saw the straw. I know that that was grown from grass grown in Navadvip, and Navadvip was where Chaitanya was born. Then I went into samadhi thinking about it. It's called holy association. We know what worldly association is. You see this, you get excited, you have desire. That's all outer association, right? And that is dreamlike, without essence. But if you think about the lion and you think about Mother Durga, that's holy association. You're going inward in this case, see. So all of this I have to say about the Lord verily imagines the jivas, external, internal, and acognitive, deep sleep. As one cognizes, so one remembers. That is, he's saying that if you take a crystal and put it in front of a blue flower, it turns blue. Red flower, red. Purple flower, purple. But the crystal's essential color is colorless, right? So wherever you put the mind, that it will become. You put it on the feet of Kali, like Ramakrishna did, then it'll become Kali. If you put it on the scriptures, it'll become scriptures. If you put it on the world, it'll become the world. And there's no reason why all of that cannot be Brahman. That you can't shift between stages in order to become practical. So you can't be an ecstatic Kali worshipper all the time. You have to come down and explain the teachings like Buddha did to the people who are interested so they can know what the bliss of Brahman is like. You have to explain the scriptures to people who don't know them so that they can have their first enlightened lifetime, their first enlightened death. See? So this is all a matter of Advaita Vedanta. Very important. So that concludes, with 15 minutes left, what I had to say about Lesson 4 of Chapter 1 of the Taittiriya Upanishad. Let us go on. I didn't think we'd get this far this weekend. Remember, next weekend, 6 more hours of this. That is 2 classes, Saturday, Sunday, same time, same loka, same acharya, as Kali's wisdom rumbles profoundly. Now, let's look at the next sloka in Lesson 4. May fortune produce for me without delay and for all time, bringing ceaselessly and in increasing measure food, drink, cloth of all kinds. All through may celibate students of hallowed wisdom come to me. May blessings rest on this oblation. May they come to me from far off and from different directions. Hail! Hail! May they come in large numbers. May they be self-controlled and calm. That is, beings of high quality, he wants them. You cannot steril pearls before swine. You take unto yourself what is the Lord's and grant unto the world what is Caesar, what is Caesar's. He's not impractical. He knows he can't teach people who aren't ready to be taught. They have to be qualified. And celibacy would be one of the first qualifications. It was in America up until the 50s or 60s. See, you became a celibate student for your first 18, 19, 20 years. I did, even in the 60s. So you're supposed to be a student, and you're supposed to focus on that. That's your brahmacharya stage, if you want to look at it in caste system. So you reserve your senses. You take them, all the energies, and you put them inside, on the heart, on the mind, and you increase your abundance of learning via Mother Saraswati's teachings. See? And when you do then, when he says celibacy, he doesn't just mean don't have sexual relations. You know, or should know, the yamas and yamas of yoga before you even do hatha yoga. This position of hatha yoga, this one stance opens up the spine. And Kundalini is already starting to rise when you sit like this. This tripod stance is very powerful. It's you don't want to give it just to anyone. What to speak of the breathing exercise that goes with it. These are very important. That's called the third and fourth limb of yoga. But the first 2 limbs are what the third and fourth limbs are founded on. If you sit like this and try and raise the prana by breathing exercises before you've mastered these 10, how many? 2 sets of how many? 5s. Yeah. Another quintuplication. Then you're begging for trouble. See, premature awakening and so forth. There's a lot of kooks who have experienced it in the spiritual realm. So what you need to do is master the 5 yamas and the 5 niyamas. And that's a great teaching that Father of Yoga has given us. Not only has the Father of Yoga given it to us, the Father of Vedanta came along and commented on it. His name was Vedavyas. And when he commented on it, he expanded it exponentially. Then, 7, 8, 900 years later, Shankara came and took the limbs of yoga and expanded them into 14 limbs, you see. So all these great seers, these great beings along the line, have taken a look at the original yoga called Patanjala or Raja or Ashtanga, and they've said, marvelous, 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 let's take these teachings and apply them to the age and to the people therein. So this is what you find in an ancient age is being inferred by the Taittiriya Upanishad's teaching here. May celibate students come to me in large numbers means faithful students. Doesn't mean just beings who are not having sexual relationships. It means continent students. Students who are observing the rules. Like I just said before here, wasn't it that we looked at the importance of the teaching of progeny? Mother, father, offspring, and procreation, the great conjunction. Well, they're not celibate. They're having children, yet they're still dharmic. Why? Because they understood the conjunction of all things. They understood the sacred nature of Shiva and Shakti coming together. They understood doing austerity before you had children, so you would get a high caliber soul born to you. So this is all very important to take in context, you see, not just in context of, say, some monastic stream that you don't understand yet. So make sure that you take these slokas and put them together. You don't just, when you leave lesson 4 and go to lesson 5, you don't just forget the first 4 lessons and, oh, now we're at 5. No, hook them together the way they're supposed to be, like a train of thoughts, like a stream of intelligence. And then squeeze the most juice out of your orange. So when he says, may I have celibate students, he's also saying, may I have students that are ahimsa. What's it mean? Non-violent. May I have students that are non-violent? I don't want to have to teach them the ills of, violence. And I don't want them to come if they're already violent. Let them work that out in the world. I don't have time for that. They must come to me already with the understanding of what it is to be non-violent, in thought, word, and deed. And the world they aren't. They want to domineer, they want to form armies, they want to march on other nations, they want to suck the resources of the world up for their own materialistic gratification and have power over others. That's violence. Violence, not just the environment, but violence to the noble Atman, which exists equally in all beings, even in them. So it's quite Mayic. It's quite a contradiction. So may they be ahimsa. You see, may they be nonviolent. May they be satya. Truthful, honest, and straightforward. May they be asteya. Hands off. May they not covet things. All belongs to them already. It just used to come to them due to the good karmas of their own deeds. See, it'll come to them. They don't need to go after it. And they shouldn't possess it because why? Quantum physics has told you that the object is empty. There's nothing there to grasp onto. And Buddhism has told you why. Shunyata, see. So, asteya, do not covet the goods of any beings. Second sloka in the Ishavasya Upanishad. Brahmacharya, continence, or if you're a householder, moderation in appetite. Aparigraha, non-accepting of any gifts. You don't know how many times I've had people come up to me at classes I've given around Christmas and ask about that one. See, Westerners, what is this thing with not accepting of any gifts? Well, what's the deepest teaching on it? You know the teaching of attachment and giving gifts have strings attached to them. You've heard all that probably. You know, that you give a gift and someone doesn't like it and there's a bad effect for a good intention. You know, that's Maya. You can't get caught in the moral implications of that. But what about the deepest teaching? Via non-indulgence of that type, non-giving and receiving of gifts, the yogi perceives the memory and mastery of his past births. How do you put that one together? Because everyone is thinking of objects, then they forget God. Basically, that's the skinny of the matter. They haven't put their mind on God and let objects just come to them, but they put their mind on objects and God then goes to the background. You can't put oil and water together and expect them to mix. Right, Ganashri? Hand it to me.
I'll tip it over.
It needs to be illustrated. See? Oh, you already shook it.
I tip.
Too bad. Well, it was separate, sort of like that, oil and water. And you shake it, and then it, you know, does oil and water mix? Oh, yes, it does. You see. And how long does it mix? About 45 seconds. Then it separates. So God and mammon, you see, matter and spirit, consciousness and materials, objects, they don't mix. You can't have them in the same location. You have to know that never the twain shall meet, that God is not a material principle, and that matter has no sentiency in it. Nature has no sentiency in it. So we say this to the kids, you know, because we want them to grow up with the Dharma. They have got dharmic parents. We've got a dharmic father in Babaji, and a dharmic mother in the Sangha leaders, and dharmic friends in the family. So we want them to have the truth. We say, remember, God and matter do not mix. They're two separate principles. But wait a minute, I thought you said everything was one. Yes, one has come out of the other. See, like bubbles come out of water and dissolve back in. Like patina comes out of copper. Like sesame oil comes out of sesame seeds. That oneness we're talking about, not numerical oneness, homogeneity. And how things come out of the hidden. The hidden comes out of the foundation, you see, which has been covered, sublated, modified, and so forth, by Maya. So, yes, they mix, Babaji, the kid says. They will sit and meditate silently and watch this for about a minute, and then they see the separation process, and then we give them the meaning of that exercise. Basically, that God cannot be a form. God cannot have a name. God cannot be caught in time. God cannot be caught in a process of separation, because it's ever one. And so forth and so on. And it opens up the whole level of dharmic teachings to begin understanding non-duality through. That's what I think of when I think of Patanjali's way of telling you about non-gift giving. See, you don't know that by not knowing this truth of God, because you've been giving gifts back and forth, that you forget about your true nature. Therefore, you don't know that you've lived other lifetimes. It's a perfect way to apply this to Western thinking. We don't remember our past lifetimes. But in India, hundreds and thousands of beings are operating on the premise that they've lived last lifetimes. It's not a conception anymore. Karma and reincarnation are not absolute laws, but they're relative laws. And being relative laws, they replace nicely this idea of chaos theory, string theory, coincidence, luck, predestination, randomness, serendipitousness, you see. They replace those very nicely, thank you. And they give me the reason why one of my siblings was a master violinist and one of my siblings was a good violinist. Why one person is born a genius and the other person's born a fool. Not by any flip of the scales of luck or by any determination of God, who is not in the matter, but by their own karmas. They have made and they have broken themselves. Like camels eating thorny bushes, or crack babies being born to crack parents. Like follows like. And we must clear the mental ground for this so people can raise themselves up by their own power. Waiting for the grace of God, they'll wait a long time. Some people have been waiting 2,000 years for the grace of God to come back. But Sri Ramakrishna said this, the wind of the grace of God is always blowing, but you must raise your sail to catch it. See how beautiful he puts the abstruse philosophy in simple terms? The wind of grace is always blowing, but you must raise your sail to catch it. So the sailor's on vigil. He's looking for every puff of wind. He's looking for the storm. You see, he's ready and prepared. He has his craft shipshape. And that would be having the yamas and niyamas under your belt. You're prepared. You can give a gift, you can receive a gift, but you have to know that not only what strings may be attached to it, but you also have to know that you should not forget your own true nature due to material objects. Mahatma Gandhi said this, when we see Sri Ramakrishna, Paramahamsa, we see God face to face. And that's how they think of, that's how a Maharshi, see, thinks of an avatar. When we see Ramakrishna come to the body, we see God face to face. And we see a person who has all of this mastered. We call him a past master. And when the divine Shakti comes with him, she's also a past master. That's why we sing all the time beautifully to them, you see. Om Devim Prasanam Pranatarti Hantrim Yogendra Pujam Jugadharma Patrim Tam Sharadam Bhakti Vigana Datrim Daya Swarupam Pranamami Nityam. O Sharada, propitious goddess, killer of misery and souls resigned, savior of religion in every age, may it by saints and sages worshipped, O mother kind, give us love and wisdom, thou, O grace incarnate, to thee we bow. Swami Abhedananda, one of the direct disciples of Ramakrishna's, song about Holy Mother, whom he grew up with, you see. When he was just a little boy, Sri Ramakrishna took him and to Holy Mother said, here's a good boy, he'll serve you. So he was there in the very presence of Holy Mother, you see, as he was beginning his life turning toward monkhood. And it's reflected in a song, in a verse like that. He understood who she was. She's the propitious goddess. She kills misery when souls are resigned to her. She saves religion in every age. And Swami Brahmananda and Swami Vivekananda worshipped her. They would come out of the room after having darshan with her reeling, and that wasn't like them. They weren't emotional people. But they'd have to grab the wall. So I just saw the Mother of the Universe, you see, in human form, Prakritim Paramam Abhayam Vardam, with her fearless mudra of Kali, you see, and with her beautiful gifting mudra of Lakshmi, in one place, you see. Yeah. So this is what we will have to continue next week in this serial that we're in. The Taittiriya Upanishad, as Kali's wisdom thunder rumbles profoundly. So here we are, have looked through the first 5 yamas, sort of in a surface way, but we've taken one a little deeper. We'll look at the 5 niyamas next week. We'll start off, if you're following the text, on lesson 4, chapter 1, lesson 4, second sloka, and We still have yet to encounter the Gayatri. That's the next sloka, Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha, the three worlds. What does that mean? And why are they mystical utterances? So here, let's end with our chant. Om Tachnayo, Om Tachnayo Ravrini Mahe, Gatung Yagyaya, Gatung Yenupataye, Daivi Svastrastu Naha, Svastir Manusebhyaha, Urdvam Jigatu Besajam, Sangno Astu Dvipade Sang Chatushpate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we make a sincere and deep offering into the Great Self. May we always delight in this sacrifice. May we always revere the Lord and Mother of all sacrifices. May divine blessings be upon us. May peace be unto the entire human race. May healing, well-being, and prosperity also abide among us. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.